episode 2 of my Stephen King short fiction project. I started this several months ago when King's newest book came out, You Like It Darker, which was a collection of short stories and novellas, and I realized I wanted to reread all of the short fiction of Stephen King's, which I consider some of his best work and a lot of his more underrated works. So what I started doing with You Like It Darker, which I called episode 1, is just an overview of that collection, and I'm going to do the same thing today with Night Shift by Stephen King. This is King's first collection. And I'm going to do the rest of these in publication order, so you'll see these rolled out a few months between each of them as I do this over the next couple years, in order to just kind of give a big overview of all of the things King that I've read and give you an idea of some of the stronger collections, some of the stronger stories and novellas that he's written. So this video will be in 3 parts. The first part is just simply an overview of Night Shift. The second part is a breakdown of all the stories within, where I tell you in about 2 or 3 sentences a little bit about each story. And then the final section, I will do kind of my final summation. I'll tell you my favorite stories in the collection and where I think this stacks up with the rest of Stephen King's many short fiction collections. So first with the overview. Night Shift was Stephen King's first published short fiction collection. It was published in 1976. This hardcover version that I have came much later. I don't know exactly when this one came out, but the hardcover version that I have is 344 pages. There are 20 short stories here and 0 novellas, so a little different than You Like It Darker, which was a mixture of the two. And the 20 short stories vary in length, at least in this collection, between 9 pages and 36 pages. The overall genre here is horror. At the time, that's pretty much the only kinds of things that Stephen King was writing. However, there's a lot of diversity within the different kinds of horror that he writes in here. We get some inanimate objects come to life. We have some great cosmic horror, which you see on some of the covers to Night Shift throughout the years. We get some good old-fashioned just humans are evil type of horror. And then we get a couple that are vampire stories that tie into one of King's most famous books, Salem's Lot. This is a very strong collection, and whichever version you have, I think it's definitely one to pick up. Okay, to summarize the 20 stories, I have a 1-sentence summary, and then I'll just kind of reflect very briefly about each one. Now, full disclosure, for most short stories, as readers, we go in blind. So with that in mind, this technically has light spoilers. I won't spoil the endings of any of these stories, but by simply giving you a little bit of the premise, it is a kind of spoiler. So if you don't want any spoilers for this collection, you just want to see my summation as well as my favorite stories from this collection, go ahead and skip to the final section. So the first story in the collection is called Jerusalem's Lot. It's a prequel of sorts to Salem's Lot, set in the 1850s and told in an epistolary manner. I really like the throwback nature to this. It felt like it was written in the 1850s and I think was a great homage to Bram Stoker's Dracula. The second story is called Graveyard Shift, and this is where a drifter is hired to clean out a basement, and there are all these rats. This is one of those that had one of those really shocking endings that Stephen King is so inventive in coming up with. Night Surf is the next story, and it's about some youths that are just partying, and you find out later why they're partying, and it was kind of one of those cool short stories that I won't say more because the discovery process in this one was such a delight. Short story called I Am the Doorway. This is an astronaut coming back from space and bringing something back with him. This is some brilliant cosmic horror, and it's very clear why this is on the cover of several of the Night Shift editions that you will find. The next one's called The Mangler, and it's about an industrial-sized folding machine from a dry cleaner's that's possessed by a demon. Typical Stephen King idea. Just saying that makes me laugh. And of course, it's executed brilliantly. The next one's called The Boogeyman, and this is a man telling his shrink about a boogeyman in his closet that killed 3 children. And this one was another one with a typical Stephen King ending that you really don't see coming. There's one called Gray Matter, which is an old man confronting a father that's gone through a very peculiar change. And I really like the kind of the freaky nature of this one, although the story itself was kind of forgettable, to be honest. Battleground. This is a very memorable one. A man gets a box in the mail that has the little green army men. Hijinks ensue. That's all I'll say about that one. Trucks. Some people are trapped at a rest stop, trapped by trucks that are seemingly sentient. And the story itself I didn't love, but I loved kind of the depiction of the story, and it's just typical King. He's so good at just the atmosphere of a story, making you feel like you're there. The next one's called Sometimes They Come Back. This is where a teacher discovers some bad teens from his youth that absolutely can't be what they seem. I love this one. It had a really just kind of disjunct type of storytelling where the teacher is reflecting that these dead youths can't be who they are, and it was a really good one. Strawberry Spring. This one is a really good one with a twist. It was about girls being killed on a college campus. The Ledge. A man makes a wager that ends up on the top of a high-rise building, circumnavigating the building on this ledge. Creepy one. The Lawnmower Man. A man hires someone to do his lawn. This one is one of those typical just wild King concoctions. Quitters Incorporated. Quitters Incorporated will help you quit smoking with a very unique method. This one was great. I mean, from beginning to end. And at the very end, there's even a twist there. It's just typical, like, great King storytelling. I Know What You Need is a college girl meets a boy who claims he knows what she needs, starting with some ice cream. And the premise was good. I didn't really love the execution of that one. A famous one, Children of the Corn, a couple driving across country, stop in a Nebraska town that appears to be dead. This one was not really like the movie. I remember the movie more than the short story, but the revelation in this one was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. The Last Rung on the Ladder. This was a story about a man reminiscing about a time where he and his sister were jumping into these hay bales. And this one had one of those just stories that it just grabbed you, and then at the ending it was just brilliant. Such a good one, strong one. The Man Who Loved Flowers is a really short story about a man who's seemingly buying flowers for his love, but it's King, so it's not what it seems. And the last two, I don't know why the One for the Road is not the last one in the collection, but One for the Road is the other one that ties into Salem's Lot. A man gets caught in a snowstorm right near the exit of Salem's Lot. You can tell things are not going to go well there. And then the last one in the collection is called The Woman in the Room, which actually had some really deep themes. It's a man caring for his mother who's dying in a hospital bed of cancer. So my overall summation of Night Shift is that it may be King's greatest short story collection. It certainly has one of his bravest stories in there, some of his bravest stories in there. And so many of these had just clever twists. And I always say that young King is kind of bold and kind of brave King, and you see that here. Now, listing my favorites is hard because literally there are 10 of them. So the 10 that I loved, I'm just going to give you shotgun on these. If you skip the second section and want to find out what they're about, you'll have to go back. But the 10 I really loved were Jerusalem's Lot, I Am the Doorway, Battleground, Sometimes They Come Back, The Ledge, Quitters Incorporated, Children of the Corn, The Last Rung on the Ladder, One for the Road, and The Woman in the Room. Those 10 out of those 20 were absolute favorites of mine as I was taking notes along the way. Those are the ones I put stars as they were so good. I think my favorite was The Last Rung on the Ladder. That one just really hit me in the gut at the end. And it's not a typical kind of horror story, but it's a typical kind of Stephen King story. Where does this collection stand? This is obviously S-tier King. Obviously one you should pick up. If you've never read King before, I think this is actually a great entry point because you do get, even though most of this is horror, you get a lot of different subgenres within the horror genre. And even the ones that aren't that great, in my opinion, are still pretty good. But anyway, that was episode 2 of my Stephen King short fiction project. My next episode will probably be January or February because the next collection that I will read is Different Seasons, which is opposite of this. This is 20 short stories. Different Seasons is 4 novellas. And it made my top 10 list when I gave my Stephen King top 10 list video. Put that out a couple years ago. So I'm really looking forward to rereading those and seeing if that stacks up as high as I thought it did when I made that list. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Twitter, Goodreads, and the Fireside Discord. I'd love to interact with you there. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.